Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
This is Tammy Patzer, and I am happy to introduce you to our guest today, Erica Henry from Murfreesboro, Tennessee, near Nashville. She's the author, illustrator of a coloring book series inspired by nature, and she also does grayscale coloring books featuring horses, cats, dogs, and flowers. Welcome, Erica.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I want to get right into our conversation because you have a fascinating background. Tell me a little bit about how you got started making coloring books.
Well, I drew all the time when I was younger, and I stopped for about 8 years. And for the past few years, I've been suffering from anxiety. And one day I was just sitting at the house and I was like, you know what? I want to draw again. So I dug out all of my supplies and started drawing and realized it helped me a lot and remembered why I enjoyed it. And then I saw an article on Facebook about adult coloring, and I saw all these people being quoted about how much coloring was helping them deal with mental illness and other illnesses that they had. And I was like, you know what? That sounds like a lot of fun. So I hopped in the car and I went and got some adult coloring books. And I came home and I started coloring, and I colored and colored and colored. And I decided that once, I realized how much it was helping me and how relaxed I got, I decided that I was going to start using my drawing skills to create my own coloring book so I can help people like those artists helped me. They helped me, find a way to deal with my anxiety better and just carve a little time out for myself. And I decided that I wanted to be able to do that for other people.
Oh, that's cool. So are your images, do you hand draw them? Do you use a computer? How do you create all your designs?
So I, most of the time, except for my Grayscale series, those are photographs, but for my, actual original coloring books, I hand draw them all. I do use, a mix sometimes of my graphic design tablet that allows me to draw on the computer versus using my pen and pencil. But for the most part, it's all pen and pencil and then cleaned up on the computer. I don't really use any computer generated images as far as, designs or anything like that. It's all me. So
Original art.
yes.
So what about, since you have the unique grayscale art, and I actually saw some samples and they're gorgeous, how do you create the grayscale art?
Okay, so what I use, there are artists out there that use Grayscale Art, which is an original hand-drawn piece that is grayscale. But I actually take photographs that were originally colored, and I turn them black and white, and then I mess with the different levels in them to optimize them for coloring. And then that way, you're able to color on top of the shading that's already there naturally in the photograph, and you get these really realistic images without having to work too hard on them, creating those shadings and highlights because those are already there.
So do you take the original photographs or do you work with a photographer?
For the series that I've done so far, those are actually by several different photographers that I have gotten rights to, and I use their work and kind of turn it into my own by adjusting everything. But there are going to be some of my own original photography as well later on in the series.
Oh, that's really cool. So when you're creating coloring books, are you thinking about just adults or groups or families? Who are you inspired by as you create these coloring books?
Mainly I kind of focus on people around my age and what they like. I'm in a lot of Facebook groups, and a lot of people that I talk to are, you know, late 20s, late 30s, right through that area. Excuse me. Right through that area. So I kind of like to talk with a lot of people and see what they like, and whether it's a more complicated design, or some people kind of like, you know, I see a lot of really complicated designs. I'd love something that I could kind of add to as well. So I kind of tailor to the 20s to 40s, and just listen to what they're wanting and kind of give it to them.
Well, that's really good advice. So you're talking to a lot of different people and they tell
Yeah.
you, hey, I'd like to color this.
Yes.
So you also have a 7-year-old son. What does your son think about these books?
Oh, he loves that mommy has her own coloring books. It's so funny because before I created these, he wanted nothing to do with art. Nothing. It was like pulling teeth to get him to sit down to color his homework. And once he saw that mommy had a coloring book out, for last Christmas, he asked for art supplies instead of toys. So a big change on him. So we get to have a lot of family time and sit and do art and color and those kinds of things. So it's very beneficial to both of us that way.
So it's a good mother-son activity. Do
Yes.
you find that a lot of people do color parties?
Um, in Facebook groups, I see a lot of people that do get together, and whether it's a quote unquote coloring party, or if it's a regular coloring group that gets together once every couple of weeks, I do see a lot of that. And I really wish we had something like that here near me. Because I think it would be a lot of fun just to get together and meet face to face with people that have similar interests to you.
Do you create books related to parties where you have multiple pages of the same image?
I do actually. The Inspired by Nature book that I have out, the original hand drawn, I do have a party edition that includes multiples of some of my top selling individual coloring pages. And then that way, if you have more than one person that wants to color the same one, you're not having to photocopy it. You're not having to decide, well, you know, I'll let them have it. I'll just color something else, because everybody can have the same image. And then it's really cool to also have everybody color the same image and then see everybody's different interpretations on it.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. I know locally we have coloring parties at the local library, and they were really impressed that they had like 35 people show up for a coloring party in a very small town here in Florida. So obviously people enjoy it. Why do you think adults are really excited about coloring books? I've just seen it explode in the past year.
Yeah, I went from never knowing about adult coloring books, even though they have been out for a few years, to, I mean, that's my job now. It has really exploded. And I think it's because it's a quick way to relieve stress and just let the day melt away. You know, they're easy enough to take with you to a soccer practice or on your lunch break. And even if you just have 5 minutes to color, it's just making sure that you carve out just those few minutes of time to yourself that are much needed, that in today's society we don't do, because everybody has cell phones, so they can always be reached. Everybody has access to their email all the time. So whenever you have that 10 minutes of nothingness, you're checking your email, you're making sure everything's taken care of. So I think adult coloring books are really awesome because you want to do it, and it just makes you carve out just those few minutes of time to yourself that are so needed.
That's really good. It's kind of like meditative coloring. It makes you just relax.
Yes.
So when you color, are you a perfectionist? Is there a good way to color or a best way to color?
I am a perfectionist a lot of times. But I think that's because I'm also an artist and I never feel like anything's ever done. But I really don't think that there is a best way to color, because just like in traditional art, everybody has their own way. And that's what makes it so awesome. Like, I love colored pencils and I love to make realistic images. I love to add shadows and shading and all those things. But I can take a look at somebody who doesn't do any of that and, uses markers that doesn't have any shading, and it can be just as gorgeous. And as long as they're enjoying themselves, I can totally appreciate it. And that's what it's about, is just, having fun with it. So, for me, I love colored pencils. That's my best way. For somebody else, it could be, markers. It could be learning new techniques. I have a lot of people that love to learn new techniques, and they're always excited because they're learning. And that's actually why I do my YouTube channel. Is because I do a lot of tips and tricks and things. And I have people telling me all the time that that is what they love about coloring it, because it's not just grabbing a coloring book to them and just coloring in the images. They're really learning new things. And that's what they enjoy most about it, is growing their artistic knowledge.
So you brought up the fact that you have a YouTube channel with some tips. Can you give me 3 tips about how to get some good results for coloring, especially if you want it to keep it as a personal keepsake, or to hang it on a wall, or to give it to somebody? Can you give me 3 tips?
Yeah. So I have people ask me all the time, what is, what is the best way to color, or what should I use? Or they don't feel like they can post their stuff on Facebook because they don't feel as like their art is as good as someone else's. And my number one thing that I always tell everybody is just stop, breathe, and have fun. Because if you're enjoying it, then you're going to put your heart and soul into it, and you're going to get your best results. Another tip that I have, a lot of people like to use pastels or other chalky mediums like eyeshadow. I actually use eyeshadow quite a bit for backgrounds. And I have people ask me all the time, how do you keep it from rubbing off? And I actually use a fixative that you can get at your local craft store. Walmart might even carry it. I'm not sure. But I get mine at Hobby Lobby, and it's Prismacolor fixative. I just got Prismacolor because that was what was on sale at the time. And they have different kinds. They have workable, where you can continue to work on top, and then the final results. And I like to use the final results one, but that keeps it from rubbing off. And then my third thing that I like to tell people, because I see a lot of people that post in Facebook groups that they started a project, but they don't like it as much, and they just want to give up on it. But even if you mess up, you can still have a wonderful gift. You may not have the whole page because the markers bled too much and you don't like how it looked, but don't toss it, because there's so many things you can do. Like, you can go to a craft store and get one of those little wooden treasure boxes, a little keepsake box. And, it's really cool to take like strips of the pages you messed up on and use this stuff called Mod Podge, which is like a glue, and put that on top, and it adheres it to the box. And then you have this wonderfully decorated box that you can give somebody. Or you can cut it into the shape of a bookmark and laminate it and have a unique hand-drawn or hand-colored bookmark that you could give somebody. So there's always a diamond in the rough. Even if you think something may not be good, there's still ways to be able to appreciate it.
I really like those tips. I love that, using eyeshadow for a background. So you're not limited to just the traditional tools of art. And,
Oh, no.
and then of course that just opened up my imagination to a ton of things. And then I love the fact that you can repurpose something, even if it's not the perfect thing that you thought it would be, create something out of it. I have used Mod Podge. That is really fun to use.
Yes, it is a staple in my house.
So do you think that coloring books are a fad, or what do you think about that?
I think they're here to stay. They've apparently been here for several years. I just learned about it in the last year myself, but I'm in so many Facebook groups, and I have so many people emailing me on a daily basis, and just saying how much that it's helping them or helping their loved ones. that I think it's here to stay. I mean, people are always looking for a way to, enjoy life more or just find something that helps them. And I believe a lot of people have found that. And that's why I think it's here to stay. I think the trends may change a little bit. I'm actually seeing that now. I'm seeing a big rise in the grayscale books. And so I think that is going to be the hot trend at the moment. And then it may go back down to hand-drawn coloring. It may go back to mandalas. That kind of ebb and flow does happen, but I think they're definitely here to stay in some shape or form.
So that's the perfect segue to talk a little bit about the business side of creating coloring books and publishing coloring books.
Mm-hmm.
If I wanted to create a coloring book or coloring pages, what would you tell me? How would I get started?
Well, it would really depend on how you're planning on creating those images. If you're going to hand draw, the minimum that you will need is pencils, paper, and pens. And then also a way to get that image into your computer. And then if you're going to use computer generated images or manipulations and ways to get your images, then you're going to need the software to do it too. The bare minimum, regardless of what method you're going to do, will be a way to digitalize your image, because it has to become digital in order to be uploaded to the publisher. And then you're going to need a computer and some software to digitalize with. Now, lots of illustrators that I know love Photoshop and they love Illustrator. When I first got started 7 years ago writing novels, I couldn't afford Photoshop. It was too expensive. So I started looking at alternatives, and I found a program called GIMP. It's GIMP, and it is an open source program that is like Photoshop. And I learned that a lot of it's very similar. So if you're not wanting to dive in to pay for Photoshop, GIMP is a great alternative. And then, if you're going to do coloring pages, then you're going to need, some sort of ability to draw or manipulate images that you have so you can create an image, because you got to have a product. Regardless of how you get the product, you've got to, in the end, have a product. So you have to have some way to make that.
So would you recommend people getting started use say CreateSpace, or is there another publishing system out there besides CreateSpace?
There are other publishing systems out there besides CreateSpace. I use CreateSpace myself. I used it on my novels, so I was very familiar with it. And so I use CreateSpace to do my coloring books. There are some drawbacks to CreateSpace. One, you can't do perforated pages. Two, you can't choose your paper weight and the thickness of the paper, and they don't do spiral bound. And that is one reason why I had a lot of people asking for perforated pages, cardstock, and spiral binding on my books. And I actually started a Kickstarter, well, 2 different Kickstarters, one for my Inspired by Nature and one for my Great a Gorgeous series. But I started a Kickstarter so I can provide those to people. It's going to be a very limited edition, but like I said earlier, I like to talk to people who color, and I like to find out what they would like. And that was something that was requested of me. So for a limited edition of my books, I'm doing a special edition to give them that perforated cardstock and spiral binding that I can't get with CreateSpace. So that's a little bit of a different route that I'm taking, but it is a route that you can go. There's other print-on-demand companies as well, such as Lulu, Lightning Source, and there are some benefits to each of those. CreateSpace is very good because they're owned by Amazon, and they get you onto Amazon very quickly. And so like when you list a book, they say it takes, I don't even remember how long they say it takes, several days, but honestly, within like 2 hours, my books are usually on Amazon because they're owned by the same people. They work very quickly. Lulu, I've never used, but I do know other illustrators that have used them, and they do spiral binding, which is a good thing. And then also Lightning Source. Lightning Source is a great resource if you want to get your books into, or have the possibility to get your books into brick or mortar stores. Lightning Source is owned by Ingram, and it is who most bookstores go through. Most bookstores go through Ingram to stock their shelves. Lots of bookstores that I have found will not carry CreateSpace made books because CreateSpace you cannot return, but Lightning Source you can. So Lightning Source is definitely a good resource if you do want to get into brick and mortar stores, but there are some drawbacks to them that I've found. One, you have to come to them with your own ISBN if you're in the US. ISBNs, if you don't buy in multiples, are very expensive. And then they also have a setup fee as well. Now, I'm not saying that Lightning Source isn't a good resource to use or don't use them, but if you are strapped for cash and you're starting this out, then you may want to go with an alternative like Lulu or CreateSpace because those are ways to do it free. So that is something to consider, but just know that there are drawbacks to that because you're more than likely not going to get into brick and mortar stores, even though they have the ability to. Most chain bookstores will not buy from them because they cannot return. So that's just, something to keep in mind.
Wow, you just gave, I don't know, 10, 20 golden nuggets right there in that conversation.
I've learned a lot about publishing over the years.
Kickstarter campaigns, I think that's a really good takeaway. And you gave, exceptional examples of CreateSpace may be the way to get started, but if you want to go deeper and bigger, you could move on to the other different publishing companies, and especially if you want to get out into brick and mortar stores. Really good advice. So I would say that my advice to everyone listening is download and then go back and take very good notes on all of that gold that she just gave us right there in those couple minutes. So you have been producing these beautiful books. What is it that keeps you inspired? How are you able to keep producing on a regular basis?
Lots of coffee. No, I'm just kind of kidding there. It's very hard to do sometimes. Sometimes I get blocked and I'm like, I have no idea what my next book is going to be. This year I'm focusing on expanding my Grayscale series, but I also am planning on putting out around 5 to 6 hand-drawn coloring books, which that's a lot to take on, but that is my goal. And so sometimes whenever I sit down, I'm staring at the blank piece of paper. I'm like, I have no idea what I want to do. But I just grab my pencil and draw something. Most of the time that something does not end up in the coloring book, but it gets my creative juices flowing. And so I just, once I get the white paper not white anymore, it's much easier for me to continue to create. And I'm a little bit of a scatterbrained artist. When I was writing books as well, I was the same way. I could never work on one project, and I have no idea why. I wish I could, but I usually have 3 or 4 different projects going on at the same time. And depending on my mood that day or what I'm inspired by, I will work on those different projects. So that's kind of my advice is don't necessarily tie yourself down to one idea, because what you start out with in the beginning or your original plan may not ever be what you do. So, don't be a slave to okay, I'm going to draw this cat book. I'm going to have 30 images and I want them all to be playing with their baby kittens. I don't know. I'm just throwing something out there. Don't be a slave to that. If all of a sudden one day you want to draw a dog because you never know where that may take you. You may end up having a whole dog book and drop the cat idea for a while, but there's no bad idea when it comes to art. There's just learning from it, and one thing moves you to another. And I keep producing books because I love it. There are lots of late nights, but they're definitely worth it.
Yeah, she said that last night you were up till 1 a.m., so I can
Yes,
imagine.
I had an art show in Nashville yesterday, and it was really funny because I sold way more coloring books than I did art.
I can believe it because
And
everywhere I go, I see coloring
yes,
books.
so
Wow.
I didn't get home till after 1 this morning and grabbed a few hours of sleep and came back in here for this interview. So it's definitely worth it though.
Great. Well, I really appreciate it. And again, I highly recommend that everybody go back and take copious notes because you did give us an awful lot of really good information about the publishing business and about how to stay motivated and inspired and how to get the creativity sparked and get it going. And how even though you're a perfectionist, you also certainly can be able to work on more than one project at a time, because I think for creative people, that's part of it is you need to kind of let it flow. Whatever
Yes.
happens, it needs to flow. So, where can we find out more about you and your services?
Well, I have several different places you can reach me. I do have a YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Erica Henry Colors. And I do lots of tips and tricks there, how to use household items like eyeshadow and coconut oil and those kinds of things in your coloring. I also have a website, which is coffeeandcoloring.com. And I also have several Kickstarters out, like I said before, and those are for the artist editions. You can reach out to me on there. I take messages there too. And then I have my facebook.com/coffee and coloring for Facebook related stuff as well.
Okay, great. I will make sure that all of the hot links will be provided in our show notes. So we'll make it really easy for people to find you and to go check out your Kickstarter campaigns. I think that is a really valuable piece of information because sometimes you might not think about, hey, I could create something at a Kickstarter and people can pre-buy it so that they can get what they want, which it might be the perforated pages, or, you know, you can create the book that your customers want that maybe it doesn't make sense to make before they say they want it. So that's a really good advice.
Definitely.
So is there anything else that you would like our audience to know about that maybe we forgot to touch on?
Trying to think. I know I gave a lot of information. I mean, one thing that I would like to say is I'm always open to people messaging me. If you have a question, if you're someone who's wanting to create a coloring book, I do not mind if you find me on Facebook and send me a message, or because that's how I got started. I originally knew nothing about publishing, whether that was a book or a coloring book. And because of people interacting with me and giving me tips and tricks and all of those things and giving me the ropes, basically, that's how I've gotten to where I am. So I'm always willing to help somebody when I can. So please feel free to message me.
Well, thank you. Erica, thank you so much for being with us today. I really appreciate it. Great tips, great information.
Thank you so much. I've had a lot of fun being here.
Thank you. This is Tammy Patzer. Go out and make it a great day.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.